Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I recently came across some information that was enlightening because it came from a Christian. And he did not know that Jesus spoke Aramaic. So when he learned that Jesus spoke Aramaic, he went on Google and he did a Google Translate to see what is the word for God in Aramaic. So when he did that, he found that in Aramaic, God is Elah or Elah, right? With an E-L-A-H. And when he translated that from Aramaic to Arabic, is it Allah. So he realized, as Christian man, he realized that the same God that Jesus, peace be upon him, was calling when he was supposedly on the cross in the Bible, and he said, Oh Allah, why have thou forsaken me? He learned that that's the same Allah that the Muslims worship, and that the same one deity that the Jews worship. So he started to see it and started to think, what exactly are these Muslims? Because up to this point, there was a lot of this propaganda that he was faced with about how Muslims worship this moon god, or Muslims worship idols, we worship the Kaaba, we worship the black stone. And he started to look into the information about Islam. So what did he find? He found that actually Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he rid the Meccan valley of all the idols that were around the Kaaba. That he said no more worshiping idols. That was his one message. And from the time of his prophethood until his death, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all of the idols around the Kaaba, all 300 of them were destroyed. And from that time until now, 1440 plus years later, that area has been a place dedicated to monotheistic worship. This is what this Christian man had learned about Islam. And so when I was watching this and he's talking about these things, he realized that Islam is a true religion. He realized that Islam is that religion that all of the prophets came with. And rather what he saw is that all throughout the history of the Bible, from all the Jewish prophets before Isa alayhi salam, before Jesus, they all came with one message, and that message was, worship thy Lord thy God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, and do not worship idols. That was the law that they all came with. And now something happened in the New Testament where the authors of the New Testament are saying, no longer are you supposed to believe that God is one. Now you're supposed to believe that God is three in one, and that Jesus came to die for your sins, and that it is this core belief of salvation through a human sacrifice that you get atonement of sins. So this is what he started to think, that this is a bit strange, right? Because first of all, there's two ways that you can view Jesus's supposed crucifixion. If you believe that Jesus's death on the cross was his human self, meaning it was his human nature that died on the cross, then you are believing in human sacrifice, and that is pagan. Everybody knows that that's pagan. Human sacrifice as a sacrifice unto God, that's pagan. Everybody knows that. So that's a pagan concept if you believe that. The second way that you can view it is you believe the Son, which is one of the Trinity, which is a part of God, that part died. Now, if you believe that a part of God died, then your God is not really a God, because God can't die. So now you have a conundrum. Either you believe in human sacrifice, or you believe that God died. And that's something that we can't believe as Muslims. So this Christian that was looking at this started to think, there's no way that this can maybe be the truth. So he started to look even deeper into things like, who are these Bible authors? Who are these authors that actually read the New Testament? So what he discovered is nothing was written in the lifetime of Isa alayhi salam, of Jesus, peace be upon her. That there was no written writings in the language of Aramaic, which is what the disciples spoke and wrote, and what Jesus spoke and wrote. Nothing was written in his lifetime. So it was interesting to think, because he's learning this from Christian scholars, but the Christian church has been propagating this idea that the Bible has actually been preserved, and it has this historical preservation to it and archaeological preservation to it. But when we get really down to exactly what's going on, why was nothing written and recorded and preserved in the lifetime of Jesus in his original language? What he learned further is that the earliest manuscript you have is 30 to 80 years after Jesus, peace be upon him, and it is the size of the credit card. This is the size of the manuscript that they found. It's called P31, I believe. That's the size of the manuscript. I'm not sure about this, but I think it has some verses unmarked. I don't remember exactly, but the point is, it's not even a complete manuscript. It's just a few verses, and that's the earliest you have. Now think about this, 30 to 80 years after Jesus, nothing's written until that time, and the thing that you have is the size of a credit card, and it's not even in Jesus' language, it's in Greek. So do you have any right to say that the Bible has been preserved? No, because you don't have anything in Jesus' language. Do you have any right to say that what you have is authentically from Jesus? No, because you don't even have something that is called, an isnad that goes back to Jesus, a chain of narrators that goes back to Jesus. Whereas, for example, with Muslims and our hadith sciences, for example, we have terminology for different types of hadith. Some of them you may have heard of, like sahih, like hasan, like da'if, which is weak, like mawquf, which is stops at sahabi, like mursal, which stops at a tabi'i, and which is munqati', which has breaks in its narration, in the chain of narrators. So for example, this Christian person was thinking about this, right? And he was looking at it and he said, okay, if we are actually going to label the isnad, the chain of narrators, for the Bible, for the New Testament as we have it today, what is the best grade that we can give to the New Testament? The best grade you can give is a hadith or a narration that is mursal, that goes to a tabi'i, that goes to somebody that is after a disciple of Jesus, peace be upon her. And that is if you accept, first and foremost, that all of these students of the disciples of Jesus were righteous people, that they didn't engage in sin, that were major, that they were strong in their memorization, that they were strong in their scribe taking, that they were strong and the narrations that they had were free from error and free from blemish and free from contradiction. That's the most merciful we can be towards that grade of hadith. But what do we find in the actual New Testament? We see that there's many errors. We see that there's many scribal contradictions. We see that there's many places that we don't even have a chain that is connected. So right away, we can't even say that the narration grade is mursal because it's not connected. The most we can say is that this narration chain is munqati', meaning that it's not connected in a series with one generation after the other, with a clear and strong memorization and a clear and strong recording that goes back to Jesus, peace be upon him. So how are you now going to say that the New Testament is your criteria for salvation when you actually don't have anything that is reliable that goes back to Jesus, peace be upon it? It's something to think about. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.